Peace for the world. Who wouldn't want that? It's what beauty queens say when they're interviewed after they've been elected. And it's what, for those of us who are old enough to go back as far as 1969, it's what John Lennon and Yoko Ono were hoping to promote by their bed-ins when they spent a week in bed, hoping that that would lead somehow to the promotion of world peace. But what I want to talk about now is something a bit more concrete than that. I want to talk about a group of people who got together and did something concrete that would actually lead to, in some way, the promotion of world peace. And I'm going to talk about the United World Colleges, which some of you may be familiar with already. I'm going to talk a little bit about the International Baccalaureate, which again some of you may be familiar with. And then I'm going to say a little bit about a particular context of a United World College in Mostar in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I've actually done a little bit of work. So the story I want to tell starts with a group of people who, in the follow-up to the Second World War in particular, had a concern about what had happened to our world and a deep concern and commitment to trying to do something to prevent that from happening again. And in particular, a key figure in what I want to talk about to you now is somebody called Kurt Hahn. And Kurt Hahn was a German Jew who had been head of Salem School in Germany. And he was very concerned about what was happening in the world. He was very concerned about what was happening in Germany. And he actually left Germany in the 1930s and came to the UK and became had naturalized British citizenship. And his concern was about a number of things that he felt needed changing. He was keen to change what he perceived to be national prejudices that had grown up and that the Second World War clearly had helped to exacerbate. He was keen to do something about what he described as spectatoritis. He was concerned that there were too many people, and young people in particular, he felt, who had got into the way of watching other people do things rather than do them themselves. And he wanted to do something about that. He was concerned about what he perceived as a decline in physical fitness, that too many people weren't taking enough exercise, weren't getting out and about and doing things actively anymore. And he was concerned about what he perceived to be an increasing apathy and cynicism in people generally, but in young people in particular. And he was involved in founding, or he actually founded himself, Gordonston School in Scotland, the Outward Bound movement, and also the Duke of Edinburgh Award. So he was very much involved in a range of activities that were all related to this underpinning philosophy that he held. And he, during the 1950s, following the Second World War, had a friendship with Air Marshal Sir Lawrence Darvel, who was the commandant of the NATO Staff College, which was here in the UK. And this was a staff college that brought together people from different national backgrounds to work together, and from backgrounds where you might expect that there might have been some animosity. There were Germans, there were British, there were Americans, there were French. And Kurt Hahn was very taken with this model, and he and Lawrence Darvel, with others who were committed to the similar sort of idea, their ideas led to the promotion of the concept of a college which could bring young people together between the ages of 16 to 18, so immediately sort of pre-university, bring them together to study together, to live together, with a view to breaking down prejudices that arise from people not knowing each other, to learning about other parts of the world and people from other parts of the world and their beliefs and their values and learning to value them. And this idea was shared with many others who shared the same sort of philosophy. And that led to, in 1962, the foundation of Atlantic College. And Atlantic College, as some of you may know, is in South Wales. It's on the coast. It's not far from Bridgend, in a place called Llantwit Major. And this college, from 1962 onwards, took in young people from the age of 16 to 18 to live together in these wonderful surroundings, to study together, with a view to promoting all those sorts of ideas that Kurt Hahn and others had. It was funded by a Frenchman called Tony Bess, and finance was found to provide scholarships to bring these young people together, because it was very important to this ideology that not only would young people come together to promote those sorts of ends, but that they would be able to do so without having to be able to be affluent enough to afford to do that. So funding was found for scholarships to enable young people to come from all over the world for that particular purpose. 1962, as I say, was the founding of Atlantic College, and that has led, since then, to the founding of a movement, the United World College movement, of which there are now 13. So there are 13 of these around the world, same values, same underpinning ideas, same age groups, 16 to 18, with, and here they are. This is the list of where they are now. As you can see, they're all around the world. They all cater for 16 to 18-year-olds. 3 of them also cater for a wider age range, and that's the ones in Maastricht, here, in Swaziland and in Singapore, which also cater for a wider age range. The others are exclusively for those 16 to 18-year-olds. So they're based on that same underlying philosophy. And there's a nice quote that was used when the college in Vancouver, on Vancouver Island, was founded, Lester B Pearson College of the Pacific. A nice quote from Lester B Pearson, who was Prime Minister of Canada, in his Nobel Peace Prize lecture in 1957, when he said, "How can there be peace without people understanding each other? And how can people understand each other if they don't know each other?" And that really underpins what the United World Colleges are about. When Atlantic College was getting off the ground in the 1960s, there was an issue for them of the curriculum they should offer to these 16 to 18-year-olds. Because they were in Wales, the obvious curriculum for them to study for that age range was A-level, the advanced level. But that had limitations for a group of students who were coming together from all sorts of different national backgrounds, because the A-level was a national program. And so it wasn't ideal for that sort of context. And the United World College of the Atlantic, as it's now called, Atlantic College as it was then, they developed a curriculum of their own, still using A-level, but that was broader than A-level and also had embedded in it these more international values. But they also felt that there was a need for something more than that, that would have greater international recognition. And this coincided, this period of the 1960s, when all this was happening, coincided with concern in other areas around the world about the lack of an international program for students immediately pre-university. And in particular, the International School of Geneva, founded in 1924, had students from all sorts of different national backgrounds with aspirations to go on to university in all sorts of different national contexts, and found that there were real challenges for them, as you might imagine, for a teacher who had a group of students from the age of 16 to 17, say, who were catering in that group for students, some of whom were going to go on to university in France and therefore needed to be prepared for the French baccalaureate. Some of them were coming back to the UK, were being prepared for A-level. Some of them were going to stay in Switzerland and wanted to be prepared for the Swiss maturité. And this was quite a challenge for teachers, having those students in the same group. And the International School of Geneva was instrumental in getting together a group of schools and colleges who had the same belief that there was a need for an international program. And Atlantic College was one of those. And they and others were behind the creation of the International Baccalaureate diploma, which has since grown tremendously and is now very well known around the world, very well recognized by universities. And this meant that these schools, international schools catering for multicultural, multinational groups of students, and United World Colleges could also offer this program to groups of students all in the same class studying the same program, and overcame the disadvantages and the challenges of trying to teach programs like, say, history to students from all sorts of different national backgrounds, when history programs, as you might imagine, tended to be very deeply embedded in a national sort of context. So the International Baccalaureate diploma was first offered in 1970. Alec Peterson was the first Director General and was certainly instrumental in developing that. And that program allowed then for the United World Colleges as they grew, to offer a program that was consistent with their values and ideology. And that was an important part of what they were about. So, as I say, the IB has gone from strength to strength, and the United World Colleges have gone from strength to strength. They are deliberately addressing in their ideology problems arising from lack of understanding, as I said, through ignorance, through prejudice, deliberately bringing together young people to study together and to live together. So it really is a 24/7 experience. And the United World Colleges use the International Baccalaureate diploma, but they also ensure that their students have a really intensive experience, because they not only study academic programs, and they have to be academically capable, but they also, for instance, in Atlantic College on the South Wales coast, they run the local lifeboat service, they go abseiling down the cliffs, they go climbing in the Welsh mountains, and it's a real sort of outward bound type experience as well as heavily academic. The United World College, I just want to say a little bit about now, is one that I've had some experience of recently, which is one that was opened in the early 21st century in Mostar in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that is absolutely consistent with the UWC philosophy, because this college was founded to bring together young people from the 3 ethnic communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And as you know, during the 1990s, as the former Yugoslavia came apart, there were wars that led to massive divisions. Bosnia-Herzegovina, having established its independence in 1992, then with the 1994 Dayton peace agreement, had been left in a situation where communities were extremely divided. And Mostar, and here is Bosnia-Herzegovina, there's Sarajevo, the capital, in the middle there, and there's Mostar lower down there. Mostar was selected by the United World Colleges to be the site of a college that would bring together students from the Bosniak, Croat and Serb communities to live together, to study together, with also students, and about half the intake of the students were from the rest of the world. Again, from fairly troubled parts of the world very often. So there were students, Palestinian students and Israeli students, intentionally brought together to get to know each other in a way that they would not do otherwise. And Mostar is a beautiful city. It's a city where the 1990s has left a huge legacy, and these are buildings that are still, in some cases, like this and haven't been rebuilt. But there are signs of recovery, as you can see. Here's rebuilding. Don't forget 93. This was the war within a war, as it was called, in Mostar, while the other wars were raging in Mostar. The Muslim, Bosniak and Catholic Croat communities were at war with each other. And that's led to a situation where the river Neretva runs through the city and one community lives on each side. So essentially, there's Mostar Bridge, the iconic Mostar Bridge, which I guess most of us are familiar with, which is now reopened after having been destroyed during those wars. Here is the United World College in Mostar, built, housed within the Mostar Gymnasium, already well established. 2 schools under one roof, as it was called, Mostar Gymnasium, because there's a Croat school and a Bosniak school with their own head in each case. 2 different communities of students, but in the same building, which is fairly progressive compared with some other schools in that country. And the United World College took over the top floor of this building, which had been left derelict after the war. It had been heavily damaged by shelling. The United World Colleges took over that top floor and brought these students together. And my colleague, Professor Jeff Thompson, and I, earlier in this decade, 2 or 3 years ago, we undertook some evaluation work there with the students. We went and visited the United World College on numerous occasions over a 2-year period. We interviewed students, we interviewed teachers, we interviewed parents, we interviewed people from the local community about their experiences of the college and the extent to which they felt that it was actually achieving its aim of promoting intercultural understanding. So we spent quite a bit of time there. We produced a report, and the conclusions we drew would certainly seem to suggest that the ideology that underpins that college, the United World College in Mostar, and also the United World College movement more generally, our conclusions would suggest that those aims are actually being met. It's not easy. We talk to students about their experiences. These students study together in class. They engage in discussion about issues that are not easy, bearing in mind that these students are 16 and 17. So the students who come from Mostar or come from Bosnia and Herzegovina have grown up in divided communities, because by the time they were born, the wars were raging. So they didn't know people from other communities. And this college has brought them together, put them together in a way that means they have to find a way of making it work. And it's not easy for them, but we heard some really strong positive stories from these students about the differences it had made from getting to know other people, from realizing that stereotypes can be problematic, realizing that they thought they knew what people from a particular background were about and were like, and realizing that actually they didn't, because they had made generalized assumptions about people instead of actually recognizing that people are individuals. And we heard many stories of people who'd formed friendships with others from other communities that they would never have dreamt they'd have formed a friendship with. And I suppose the main thing that had happened was that they believed they had learned, and their parents were saying the same thing, the teachers were saying the same thing, they'd learned to look at other people as individuals rather than as being from a particular community. So as individuals first and foremost. Didn't mean they necessarily liked everybody, of course. They had learned that they actually didn't like some people, but it was because they didn't like them and their particular personality traits, not because they didn't like them because of where they came from. So there are lots of stories that I haven't got time to share with you now about the effect of that sort of education and the reasons why they felt it had happened, partly related to the academic studying together, and the International Baccalaureate diploma certainly was important in terms of coming through there, encouraging them to engage in critical thinking, looking at arguments from different perspectives, making their case in a convincing way and so on. But also from working together through community service activities and from living together, and that was a really important dimension of all this, because these students were not only living in the same houses, residential accommodation, they were sharing bedrooms deliberately put together, because it was bedrooms for 2 or 3 students, deliberately put together in a way that wouldn't necessarily be easy for them and move them out of their comfort zone. Lots of stories there about students really learning to live together. As I say, not always easy, but overall certainly the indications from our study are that this was a successful project. So, promoting international understanding, global peace, is it a pipe dream? Is it something that's nice to talk about but can't be achieved? Our suggestions here are that no, the United World Colleges are doing something concrete about it. Thank you.